Let's talk about that moment when everything inside you wants to explode. The moment he pulls away, goes cold, or doesn't respond. Your heart's racing, your mind's spinning with what you should say, and suddenly you feel this emotional urgency to act, to reach out, to clarify, to fix. That's what I call emotional reaction mode, when you're no longer responding to the situation with clarity, but reacting to the storm of feelings inside you. And here's the problem with emotional reactions: they rarely serve your best interest. They feel powerful in the moment, but they're driven by fear, not confidence. The fear of losing him, the fear of being forgotten, the fear that your silence will be misunderstood. But let me tell you something: real power is quiet, it's calm, it's composed, and most importantly, it's strategic. Reacting emotionally looks like texting him late at night because you miss him, sending a paragraph to explain how he hurt you, hoping he'll finally understand, blocking him so he feels your absence, but secretly hoping he notices. All of these feel like taking control, but they're actually giving your power away. Why? Because they're rooted in a need for him to validate you, for him to respond, for him to come back and reassure you. It makes your worth dependent on how he chooses to show up or not show up. Now contrast that with a strategic response. A strategic response is when you slow down, when you ask yourself, what's the outcome I truly want? And what action aligns with that? It's choosing not to send that impulsive message because you know it won't create the result you desire. It's resisting the urge to chase because you understand that love isn't built through pursuit, but mutual effort. It's letting go of control over what he does and focusing entirely on how you want to feel and show up. That's not indifference. That's emotional maturity. Being strategic doesn't mean playing games. It means knowing the value of your energy and refusing to waste it in desperation. It means you're responding not from your emotional low, but from your emotional center, grounded in self-respect. You don't need to react just because you feel something. You can feel sadness, disappointment, or even longing, and still choose silence, not to punish, but to protect your peace. That's strength. And that strength is magnetic. Because while most people are out here reacting to every emotional itch, chasing every spark of connection, the person who can sit in stillness, who can resist the urge to beg, explain, or fix, that person stands out. That person becomes unforgettable. So the next time you feel that pull to react, pause. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be louder. You just need to stand in the quiet power of knowing your value. That's not emotional reactivity. That's strategy. And strategy wins the long game of love. The hardest thing to do when you miss someone is nothing. Your fingers itch to type. Your mind plays out how he might respond if you just send a simple hey. You convince yourself it's innocent, harmless, just checking in. But deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you're hoping for something. A reply, a spark, a sign that he still cares. And that right there is the trap. Texting first might relieve the anxiety temporarily, but it often reinforces the wrong message, not to him, but to yourself. Every time you reach out first after being met with silence, you're teaching yourself that his absence means you have to do more. You're saying his withdrawal is my responsibility to fix, but it's not. A relationship is a two-way street, and if someone can't even meet you halfway, your job is not to walk the whole road to find them. The truth is, silence is powerful. It's not passive. It's a language. And when you stop initiating contact, you're not giving up. You're communicating something quietly but profoundly. I respect myself enough not to chase someone who isn't choosing me. You see, people notice when your energy is no longer accessible. They might not react right away, but eventually they feel the shift. And that silence, that pause in your usual pattern, forces a moment of truth. It invites them to ask themselves, where did she go? That space creates curiosity, and curiosity can be a stronger pull than pressure ever will be. Now, this isn't about reverse psychology. This isn't about manipulating someone into missing you. It's about shifting the focus back to you. Because every time you choose not to send that first text, you're reclaiming your emotional dignity. You're letting him show you whether he has the interest and the effort to reach out. And that tells you everything you need to know. Here's the thing. The person who wants to talk to you, who values you, who feels your absence, they will reach out. You won't have to remind them that you exist. You won't need to chase connection. So stop giving him the comfort of your constant availability while he gives you the uncertainty of silence. Let the silence speak for you. Let it reflect your standards. Let it say, I am open to love, but not available for confusion. That's not cold. That's clarity. And clarity is incredibly attractive. In those moments when you feel the urge to break the silence, don't act on impulse. Instead, ask yourself, am I texting him because I miss him or because I miss how I felt when he made me feel wanted? If it's the second, then don't text. Sit with that feeling and remember that the real connection you're looking for doesn't require you to beg for it. Let the silence do what words can't. Let it draw in what's meant for you, or clear the space for what's better, Blocking someone after a breakup or emotional fallout often feels like a declaration of power. It's a sharp, instant move that says, I'm done. You don't get access to me anymore. And for a brief moment, it feels good. It feels like you've taken control. But more often than not, blocking isn't a reflection of strength. It's a reflection of emotional overload. It's a loud reaction in a moment when what you really need is quiet strength. Most people don't block because they're over someone. They block because they're still emotionally entangled and overwhelmed. It's an act of desperation disguised as empowerment. It says, you hurt me, and now I'm going to show you what it feels like not to have me. But the truth is, if you're doing something just to get noticed, whether it's texting first or cutting off completely, you're still giving that person the power to dictate your behavior. Blocking someone doesn't guarantee peace. In fact, it can often create more anxiety. You block him, then check to see if he noticed. You wonder if he's trying to contact you some other way. You imagine his reaction. You replay it over and over. In that case, he's still in your head. He still has access, just not to your phone. And that means your emotional energy is still invested in someone who isn't giving you what you deserve. Now, let's be clear. There are moments when blocking is necessary. If someone is being disrespectful, toxic, manipulative, or abusive in any way, blocking is not just appropriate. It's essential. It's a boundary, not a game. But if you're blocking someone just to make a point, to get their attention, or to force a reaction, it's not a boundary. It's a performance, one that keeps you stuck in the very dynamic you're trying to escape. Real strength isn't in how loudly you shut a door. It's in how calmly you walk away and stop knocking. You don't need to announce your exit. You don't need to slam the metaphorical door just to make him feel your absence. Let your silence, your lack of reaction, your emotional detachment speak louder than any dramatic gesture. If you really want to move forward or even create the kind of curiosity that makes someone reconsider losing you, don't block. Unplug emotionally. Focus inward. Make your life so full, so rich, so deeply aligned with your values that whether he's watching or not becomes irrelevant. That's true detachment. And if he does come looking for you again, if he reaches out wondering why the energy has shifted, you'll be answering from a place of power, not pain. From peace, not performance. And that's when you know you didn't need to block him after all. You just needed to stop letting him occupy space in your mind. Quiet exits, powerful returns, no need to shout. There is a state more powerful than anger, more magnetic than desperation, and more disarming than sadness. That state is emotional neutrality. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've detached your sense of identity and worth from someone else's behavior. And that kind of detachment isn't cold, it's clarity. Emotional neutrality is the middle ground between reaction and indifference. You're not overinvested, but you're also not shut down. You're aware, but not reactive. You can observe someone's actions, or lack thereof, and instead of internalizing them as a reflection of your value, you simply take them as information. Information that helps you make better decisions, not emotional stories that keep you stuck. When he pulls away, emotional neutrality says, okay, that's his choice. When he doesn't text, emotional neutrality says, that's data, not rejection. When he comes back, emotional neutrality says, let me observe, not assume. And that ability to stay centered, not swinging from one emotional extreme to the other, gives you a sense of peace that no relationship can give or take away. Most people live on emotional roller coasters when they're dealing with love. 1 minute they're hopeful, the next they're spiraling. And that emotional instability is what leads to poor choices, sending a message you didn't mean, creating drama just to feel something, or chasing validation from someone who's barely showing up. But when you operate from emotional neutrality, you don't chase, you don't panic, you watch. You don't panic, you watch. You take a step back and ask, Is this what I want? Is this aligned with how I want to be treated? Is this consistent with my standard? That pause, that calm, clear breath between what happens and how you respond, that's where your power lives. And the irony, emotional neutrality is deeply attractive. People are drawn to those who aren't scrambling for attention, approval, or reassurance. Because neutrality doesn't mean indifference. It means self-assurance. It means you're not easily shaken. It means you can love someone without losing yourself in the process. When someone knows they can't rattle you, they begin to respect you differently, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely value your peace more than their inconsistency. You're not seeking closure, you create it. You're not waiting for the right message. You already got the message through their behavior. You're not stuck in the story. You're focused on your standard. So when you're tempted to spiral, to overthink, to act out of fear, remember this: the strongest move isn't always to speak, to text, to explain. Sometimes the strongest move is to do nothing, to let things unfold, to allow someone to reveal who they are while you remain centered in who you are. That's emotional neutrality. It's not passive, it's powerful. Because when your peace becomes non-negotiable, everything changes, including who you allow to get close to you. It's easy to get caught in the emotional current of someone else's behavior. When he pulls away, you feel panic. When he comes close, you feel safe. When he's cold, you mirror that coldness, not out of strength, but out of pain. This back and forth push and pull dynamic becomes exhausting. And what often happens is you begin mirroring his emotions, not his effort, which is where the real mistake begins. When someone you care about goes distant, it's tempting to emotionally match their confusion. If they become moody, you get anxious. If they ignore you, you start wondering what you did wrong. But here's the truth. His emotional state isn't your responsibility, and it definitely shouldn't dictate your behavior. Matching someone's mood isn't connection. It's codependence. It's giving up your emotional stability to keep a fragile connection alive. Instead, mirror the effort. If he's reaching out, you respond with warmth. If he's consistent, you stay open. But if he's showing distance, you don't rush in to fix it. You don't try harder to keep his attention. You give equal effort. Nothing more, nothing less. This isn't about playing games. It's about setting a baseline standard for what you will and will not invest in. It's about aligning your energy with someone's actions. Not their potential, not their excuses, and certainly not their mood swings. When you mirror effort, you stop chasing clarity in someone else's chaos. You simply say, I'll match what you give me, and if it's not enough, I'll step back. It's not cold, it's self-respecting. Mirroring effort gives you emotional clarity. It tells you who is genuinely interested and who is just stringing you along. Because a person who truly values you doesn't give minimal effort and expect maximum access. And if someone does, your ability to not overcompensate is the fastest way to show them your worth without having to say a single word. Here's what's beautiful about this mindset. It frees you. You're no longer riding someone else's emotional roller coaster. You're not texting first every time just to keep things alive. You're not waiting for him to shift emotionally so you can feel secure. You've set your pace, and that pace is determined by action. Not attachment. When you mirror effort, you leave space for the right people to show up properly and the wrong ones to walk away. And either outcome is a win, because what you're really doing is holding a standard, not playing hard to get. You're making it clear that love, real love, is reciprocal. And so the next time you're tempted to chase because he feels distant, pause, breathe. Don't rush in emotionally. Just ask yourself one question. Am I matching his feelings or am I matching his actions? Then choose the latter. Every time. Because true connection isn't about giving more. It's about giving in alignment. And when your energy aligns with effort, not emotion, you stay in control of your peace, your power, and your path. People often believe that if they just say the right thing, explain themselves perfectly, or send that one final message, it will finally click. He'll understand what he lost and come running back. But the truth is, most people, especially men, don't hear clarity through words. They feel it through absence. Men don't always respond to what you say. They respond to what's missing when you stop saying anything at all. You can explain until you're exhausted. You can pour your heart out. You can write the long paragraph, detail your pain, and hope he finally understands how deeply he hurt you. But in most cases, he won't get it. Not because he's cruel or incapable, but because when you're still present, still accessible, still explaining, he doesn't feel the consequences of his behavior. Words, no matter how emotional or honest, can easily be brushed off, but the quiet shift in energy when you stop engaging, that lands. That's what makes someone stop and think, wait, where did she go? Not just physically, but energetically. When your attention disappears, when your affection is no longer freely available, that is when they start to notice. It's not the message that changes hearts. It's the mystery. Hearts. It's the mystery. When you stop trying to convince him of your value and simply remove your presence, he has to confront the space you once filled. And that space, that silence, becomes louder than anything you could have said. Because now it's not you chasing him, it's him wondering why you're no longer chasing. And here's where your real power lies, in being missed. When you stop texting first, when you stop watching his stories, when your name stops popping up in his notifications, it creates a void, a mental question mark, a disruption in the pattern. That's when he begins to feel your absence. And for the first time, he might actually consider what life looks like without your effort, your energy, your presence. This isn't about punishing him or playing mind games. It's about removing the emotional cushion he's been leaning on. Bane. If someone believes they can drift in and out of your life without ever feeling the impact of their inconsistency, they'll never respect your presence because they've never had to feel your absence. You don't need to explain. You don't need to defend your silence. The people who truly care won't need a speech. They'll feel your distance, and if they value you, they'll make a move. If they don't, that silence just saved you more pain down the line. So stop filling the space with noise. Let what's missing do the talking. Because when someone realizes you're no longer there, that you've stopped reaching out, stopped waiting, stopped holding the emotional weight, it hits differently. They won't remember everything you said, but they will remember how it felt when you disappeared. One of the most misunderstood ideas in dating is that attraction is created by constantly being available, proving your loyalty, or staying emotionally close no matter how someone treats you. But real attraction, the kind that draws someone back in and makes them rethink losing you, doesn't come from chasing, it comes from self-focus. When someone pulls away or goes silent, the natural instinct is to try harder. You want to close the gap. You want to prove your worth. But the truth is, attraction doesn't thrive under pressure. It thrives in space. And the most powerful way to create that space is by redirecting your energy. It's not toward him, but toward yourself. Self-focus isn't selfish. It's magnetic. When you start pouring your attention back into your life, your goals, your friendships, your health, your passions, something shifts. Not only do you begin to feel better, but the entire dynamic between you and him changes. You stop operating from a place of emotional neediness. You're no longer depending on his presence to feel good about yourself. And that quiet shift from anxious waiting to intentional living is deeply attractive. People can sense when you're obsessed with them. And people can also sense when you're too busy building a fulfilling life to chase breadcrumbs. When your world doesn't revolve around him, you become intriguing again. Not because you're trying to be, but because you're genuinely investing in yourself. That confidence, that glow, that self-sufficiency, it draws people in. And even if he doesn't come back, even if the silence remains, you win. Because what you've done is reclaimed your emotional energy. You've taken your focus off trying to fix a situation and instead started improving the only thing you can truly control. Think about this. Who's more attractive? The person constantly checking their phone, wondering when he'll text, refreshing his stories, or the person out there creating new experiences, surrounded by people who uplift her, growing, glowing, living? The answer is obvious. And more importantly, you feel the difference. One version leaves you drained. The other builds self-worth day by day. Self-focus also gives you clarity. When you're not so consumed by someone else's actions, you're able to actually step back and ask, is this situation even healthy for me? Is this the kind of energy I want to keep allowing into my life? You gain perspective, and with perspective comes power. The irony is, the less you chase validation from someone, the more valuable you become in their eyes. Not because you're trying to play a role, but because you've become centered. And centered people are rare and unforgettable. So stop asking how to get him back, because nothing creates real, lasting attraction like a woman who chooses herself with or without him. In relationships, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking your value is shown by how available you are. You pick up every call, you answer every text. You're always ready to rearrange your schedule just in case he wants to see you. You think, if I just show him how good I am, how loyal, how committed, he'll realize I'm worth it. But the truth is, availability without boundaries doesn't increase your value, it dilutes it. Real value isn't demonstrated by how often you say yes. It's reflected in what you say no to. It's revealed in what you won't tolerate, what you won't settle for, and how you protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Being constantly available might feel loving, but if it comes at the cost of your standards, it quickly becomes desperation, and people can sense that. The moment you start prioritizing someone who hasn't clearly prioritized you, you unintentionally communicate, I'll accept less than I deserve just to keep you around. And that doesn't build respect, it erodes it. You are not valuable because you're always there. You're valuable because you choose where to be, who to invest in, and how to respond based on your worth, not your fear of losing someone. Standards don't mean having a list of demands. They mean having a clear sense of what behavior is acceptable in your life. If he only calls you late at night, your standard says, I'm not just a convenience. If you're inconsistent, your standard says a consistency is a requirement, not a bonus. If he gives mixed signals, your standard doesn't try to decode them. It walks away. And here's the shift. When you start living by your standards instead of your emotions, everything changes. You stop reacting to breadcrumbs. You stop waiting for potential to turn into action. You stop trying to earn someone who isn't giving you effort freely. And as a result, the energy you carry becomes stronger, more self-assured, more grounded. That's the kind of presence people respect and are drawn to. Men are not impressed by how much of yourself you give away for free. They're impacted by how intentional you are with your time and attention. You will be your time and attention. The one who gets your presence is the one who's earned it, not just the one who asked for it. So instead of asking, how can I show him I'm worth it? Ask, am I acting like I know I'm worth it? That's what standards are. The daily choices that reinforce your self-worth without ever needing to say a word. Because in the end, it's not how available you were that he'll remember. It's how high your standard was when he didn't meet it. And whether he rises to meet it or fades away, you'll know you stood firm. Not for him, but for you. There's a common reaction when someone pulls away or treats you poorly. The impulse to cut them off completely, to block, delete, erase them from your life like they never existed. And while there are moments when going no contact is necessary, especially in toxic or abusive dynamics, there's a more powerful move in many cases. Not cutting him off, but simply no longer offering him unlimited access to you. Access is a privilege, not a right. And yet when you care about someone, you often give them more access than their behavior justifies. You answer messages immediately. You say yes even when it inconveniences you, and you let them back in, emotionally or physically, whenever they decide they're ready. You make yourself available, hoping that your consistency will inspire theirs. But here's the reality. People value what they earn, not what's constantly offered. When someone knows they can come and go without consequence, they have no incentive to change. Why would they? You've shown them that regardless of their effort, they still get your time, your attention, your heart. That's not strength. That's emotional overextension. And it's time to bring that back in. Limiting access doesn't mean being cold or passive-aggressive. It means aligning your availability with someone's consistency. If he disappears for a week and then texts you late on a Friday night, you don't rush to reply. If he stopped calling, you don't fill the silence with long paragraphs. You observe. You respond calmly, not urgently. You slow down the rhythm, not out of pettiness, but out of principle. This is about teaching people how to treat you, not through words, but through your boundaries. When someone steps back, you don't chase. You match their energy, not their excuses. And if they want more of you, they need to show up for that space, consistently, respectfully, and with clear intent. Think about it like this. You're not closing the door, but you're not leaving it wide open either. You're leaving it cracked. Just enough for someone to prove they deserve to come back in. And that subtle shift from always available to earned access is where your power lives. When you operate this way, you take control of your energy. You no longer live on edge, waiting for their next move. You're not trying to get a reaction. You're protecting your peace. And that energy is powerful because it communicates without drama. I am not an option you can revisit when it's convenient. I am a standard you rise to meet or miss out on. So no, you don't always have to block him, but you do need to stop handing him the emotional keys to your life. Let him feel the shift, let him earn the space, and let your boundaries speak louder than your feelings ever did. Silence is often misunderstood as a tactic. People think of it as a way to get a reaction or manipulate someone into noticing your absence. But when used from a place of self-awareness, silence isn't a strategy to control others. It's a reset to regain control of yourself. After a breakup, a confusing situation, or emotional withdrawal from someone you care about, your first instinct may be to fill the gap. You want to talk, explain, understand, fix, to keep the connection alive in any way you can. But that kind of reaction comes from emotional chaos, and anything done from chaos tends to backfire. It pulls you out of alignment with yourself. You go from being calm and grounded to desperate and reactive. This is where silence becomes powerful, not as a move in some dating game, but as a tool to recenter. Silence gives you space to breathe again. It clears the emotional noise so you can see what's actually happening. Not what you hope is happening, not what you're afraid is happening, but what is. In silence, you stop reacting to their every move. You pause the pattern. You step out of the loop of waiting and wondering, and you begin to focus on the one thing that needs your attention most, your inner world. How do you feel? What do you need? Are you still acting from your standards, or have you drifted into emotional survival mode? When you go quiet, it's not to make him miss you. It's to remember who you are when you're not tangled in someone else's mixed signals. And ironically, that's often when they do start to notice, not because you disappeared, but because you stopped broadcasting neediness. You stopped feeding a connection that wasn't feeding you back. Silence creates contrast. It shows someone what it feels like without your presence, your attention, your emotional labor. And if they're emotionally aware, it gives them a moment to reflect too. But whether they use that moment to come closer or drift further away isn't your responsibility. The silence was never about them to begin with. This is your reset. It's a sacred pause, a declaration that says, I am no longer available for emotional confusion. I need clarity, and I will not fight for it in noise. And from that pause, your clarity begins to return. You regain power not because you're withholding, but because you're reconnecting with your truth. So don't treat silence like a weapon. Don't wait by your phone hoping it gets a reaction. Let silence be your sanctuary. Let it be the space where you stop chasing and start healing. Because in that quiet, you find the strongest voice of all, your own. And that voice will always lead you further than anyone you once tried to hold on to ever could. There comes a moment, often after disappointment, heartbreak, or just emotional exhaustion, when you realize you've been performing. Not in a theatrical sense, but emotionally performing. You laugh a little louder. You post things designed to make him notice. You shape your responses to appear chill, cool, effortless, even when you're hurting. You send the perfect message, whether your right outfit, show up in ways that you hope will spark something in him, reignite interest, make him chase again. But here's the truth. As long as you're performing, you're not being real. And if you're not being real, you're not building anything worth keeping. The most powerful shift in any relationship, especially when things feel distant or uncertain, is the moment you stop trying to win someone's attention and start living like your attention is worth earning. That shift doesn't happen when you get the right reaction. It happens when you no longer need the reaction to feel worthy. You start showing up differently, not colder, not with a fake sense of indifference, but with emotional honesty. You're not trying to prove you're good enough. You know you are. You're not curating a version of yourself to fit someone else's preferences. You're showing up as you. Flaws, strength, softness, all of it. When you stop performing, you stop placing your self-worth in someone else's hands. If they text, great. If they don't, you're not spiraling. If they watch your story but don't reply, you're not decoding it. If they come closer, you welcome it. But only if it matches the energy and effort you're bringing to the table. And if they drift, you let them. Not because you don't care, but because you've stopped begging to be chosen. That's the moment you take your power back. What people respond to most isn't perfection. It's authenticity. When you're no longer seeking validation through performance, you become grounded. There's something unshakable about you. You're not scrambling for attention. You're not anxiously refreshing your feed. You're present, intentional, and deeply aligned with your values. And ironically, that's when people start noticing. Because you're not trying anymore. You're just being. You're not manipulating the moment to fit your expectations. You're living it fully. And from that place, you attract those who are meant to be there. Not because you twisted yourself into who you think they want, but because you were bold enough to be yourself without apology. So take off the mask. End the performance. End the performance. You don't need to prove your worth through effort, appearance, or perfection. The people who truly value you will never require a performance, just your presence. And when you give that to yourself first, you'll never have to chase it again. When something goes wrong in a connection, maybe he pulls away, maybe things fade. Maybe there's confusion or an argument. Your instinct might be to explain, to talk, to reason. It was about helping you rise so high in your standards, your peace, your self-worth, that anyone who once took you for granted has only two choices: rise with you or watch you move on. You were not hard to love. You were just offering your love in a space that wasn't ready to receive it. I'm also ready to receive it. Now you're ready to receive yourself. And that, above all, is what changes everything. No more chasing, no more proving, just power, just presence, just you exactly as you are, and more than enough.